the other 28% of the time, well, it seems to make things.
Family Matters premiered on ABC on September 22nd, 1989, and for the next 9 seasons, it became one of the most beloved Friday night staples in American television. Millions of families gathered around the TV every week, laughing along with the Winslows, and almost nobody caught what was hiding in plain sight. So today, we're going through 30 hidden details you missed in Family Matters.
Let me come to live with you. Well, we're glad to have you, aren't we, Carl?
We're just tickled to death.
Number 30. The show was a spin-off nobody expected. Family Matters did not begin as its own idea. It was a direct spin-off of Perfect Strangers, which aired on ABC from 1986 to 1993. The character of Harriet Winslow, played by Marie Payton, first appeared as an elevator operator at the Chicago Chronicle newspaper in Perfect Strangers. She was a recurring supporting character, not a lead. When producers decided to build a new show around a working-class Chicago family, they brought Harriet with them and built the Winslow household around her. Most viewers in 1989 had no idea they were watching a spin-off at all.
Hi, Laura.
Number 29. Urkel was only meant to appear once. Steve Urkel, played by Jaleel White, was written as a one-time guest character for a single episode in the first season. He was supposed to appear, get his laughs, and disappear. The audience reaction to White's performance was so strong that the producers immediately brought him back. By the second season, Urkel had become the central figure of the entire show, a complete reversal of the original premise. The show had been designed around the Winslow family, and it quietly became the Steve Urkel Show in everything but name.
You always thought I was some kind of a freak. Go figure.
Number 28. Jaleel White was 12 years old at the audition. When Jaleel White walked into the audition for the guest role that would change his life, he was 12 years old. He had already been working as a child actor for several years by that point, with appearances in shows including The Jeffersons and Charlie and Company, but nothing in his earlier work suggested what was coming. White developed the Urkel voice, walk, and mannerisms entirely on his own during the audition, and the creative team recognized immediately that what they were seeing was something genuinely original. Number 27. The Winslow House. Address was never consistent. Throughout the run of the series, the Winslow family's home address was referenced on screen at various points, and the numbers changed. The house was generally described as being on Pinehurst Avenue in Chicago, but different episodes cited slightly different street numbers and contradictory details about the neighborhood and its surroundings. For a show built around a police officer who would presumably know his own address, it is an irony that went entirely unnoticed during the original broadcast. It is a small detail that slipped past viewers, because the warmth and energy of the performances made continuity errors like this essentially invisible.
How many kids you haven't told me about?
I guess this is not a good time to tell you that the car needs...
Number 26. Harriet Winslow changed jobs between seasons. In the early episodes of Family Matters, Harriet worked as an elevator operator, the same job she had held in Perfect Strangers. As the show developed and writers steered Harriet toward a more active community role, her occupation quietly shifted. By later seasons, she was working as a police officer alongside Carl, a significant change that was never given a full on-screen explanation or a dedicated episode marking the transition. Most viewers accepted it without question, but watched back to back. The contrast is striking. it remains one of the more notable character continuity adjustments the show made as it evolved away from its original conception.
In a few moments, we're gonna unlock that door and make history.
Yes.
Not to mention a whole lot of money.
Number 25. The theme song had different versions. The Family Matters theme song, As Days Go By, was written by Jesse Frederick and Bennett Salve, the same duo behind the themes for Perfect Strangers, Step by Step, and Full House, making them two of the most prolific sitcom composers of the TGIF era without most viewers ever knowing their names. The theme was re-recorded and slightly adjusted at different points in the show's run, and the version most viewers remember from syndication is not always identical to the version that aired during the original broadcast seasons. Subtle differences in tempo, arrangement, and vocal mix that are easy to miss but audible once you know to listen for them.
Max, we gotta liven this place up. Nobody's there.
Number 24. TGIF was built partly around this show, a BC's TGIF programming block. Thank God It's Friday became one of the dominant forces in American family television in the early 1990s, and Family Matters was one of its anchoring shows from essentially the beginning. What most viewers did not think about while watching was how deliberately the block had been constructed. BC programmers placed complementary shows together on Friday nights to create a viewing habit rather than a single show appointment. Family Matters' consistent ratings, especially when paired with Full House and later Boy Meets World, helped establish the commercial reliability of the entire block in ways that benefited every show that appeared alongside it.
But these fancy plans you're making will put a dent in your savings, honey.
I know.
But why would you do that?
Number 23. Mother Winslow quietly disappeared. The early seasons of Family Matters included the character of Mother Winslow, Carl's mother, played by Rosetta Lenoir, as a warm and regular presence in the Winslow household. Lenoir was a veteran actress whose career stretched back decades, and her portrayal of the family matriarch added a generational depth that gave Carl's character additional context and texture. Over time, her appearances became less and less frequent, and the character eventually faded from the show without a formal goodbye or a dedicated storyline marking her departure. Viewers who grew up with the early episodes often remembered her as a central part of the show's warmth without quite being able to pinpoint when she had simply stopped appearing.
86! Edward! Okay, listen up. Now, it's bad enough that you were driving reckless.
Number 22. Reginald VelJohnson almost didn't get the role. Carl Winslow was played by Reginald VelJohnson, and the casting feels so natural in retrospect that it is easy to forget it was not inevitable. VelJohnson had come to wider attention playing a cop, specifically Sergeant Al Powell, in Die Hard in 1988, the year before Family Matters premiered. The timing was notable. VelJohnson essentially went from one of the most commercially successful action films of the decade directly into one of the most successful family sitcoms of the decade, playing a police officer in both. His warmth and physical presence anchored the Winslow family in a way that made Carl one of the most genuinely likable fathers in the history of the genre.
Let's go over the plan. We get the diamonds, I check them out, and then I give the signal. They look real to me.
Number 21. The show was set in Chicago, but rarely filmed there. Family Matters was set in Chicago and made consistent, specific references to Chicago geography, culture, and institutions throughout its run. Carl worked for the Chicago Police Department, the family attended local events, and characters referenced specific neighborhoods in ways that gave the setting real texture. Despite all of this, the show was produced entirely in Los Angeles, primarily at the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank. The Chicago setting was maintained through set design, dialogue, and occasional exterior establishing shots of actual Chicago locations rather than any significant on-location filming. For viewers in Chicago, the show's affection for their city was genuine even if the production itself was happening 3 time zones away.
Phil, I'd like you to meet my son. Edward Winslow, Phil D'Angelo.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Number 20. Eddie Winslow's actor had prior comedy experience. Darius McCrary, who played Eddie Winslow, Carl and Harriet's eldest son, had been working as a child actor before Family Matters came along. He was 9 years old when the show premiered, and he grew up on screen across the show's 9-season run in a way that gave his character a visible and believable arc from childhood to young adulthood. His rapport with Reginald VelJohnson as father and son developed naturally over the course of the show and became one of the more consistently grounded relationships in a series that was increasingly built around Urkel's outlandish storylines. McCrary brought a naturalistic quality to Eddie, the eye-rolling teenage son, then the maturing young man figuring out his direction, that kept the character relatable and sympathetic, even as the world around him became progressively more fantastical.
Let the man in.
Number 19. Laura Winslow was the original central young character. Before Urkel arrived and reshaped the show's center of gravity, the primary young character around whom storylines were being built was Laura Winslow, played by Kelly Shaneen Williams. Laura was written as the teenage lead, dealing with school, friendships, social pressures, and the ordinary but meaningful challenges of growing up in a Chicago family. The original pitch for the show centered on her navigation of adolescence as the oldest daughter in a working-class household. The dynamic shifted dramatically once Urkel became a series regular, and Laura's role evolved into something she had not originally been designed to occupy, the object of Urkel's relentless, good-natured, years-long romantic pursuit. Williams handled this transition with considerable skill, giving Laura enough independence and wit that she never felt reduced entirely to a reaction to Urkel, even when the scripts put her in that position.
Sorry, I'm really sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Number 18. The Urkel character had a full name with a reason. Steve Urkel's full name, Stephen Quincy Urkel, was not chosen arbitrarily. The name was designed to sound simultaneously memorable and slightly awkward, entirely consistent with the character's overall presentation. The middle name Quincy has long been noted by fans as a possible nod to Quincy, the long-running NBC medical drama starring Jack Klugman that aired from 1976 to 1983 and remained in syndication well into the following decade, though whether that was the writer's specific intention has never been confirmed on the record. The surname Urkel itself was constructed to be phonetically distinctive, easy to hear clearly, easy to reproduce, and unusual enough that it would attach itself to the character's identity immediately. The show's writers had a reputation for embedding layered pop culture references into character details that most of the audience would absorb without consciously registering the source. Number 17. Urkel's catchphrases were not scripted initially. Several of Steve Urkel's most recognizable catchphrases developed organically from Jaleel White's improvisations during early tapings rather than from material the writing staff had put on the page. White had a gift for finding the exact verbal rhythm and inflection that would produce the biggest audience reaction in a live taping environment, and the writers began formally incorporating the phrases into scripts after observing how consistently and powerfully audiences responded to them. The relationship between the performer and the writing staff became increasingly collaborative as it became clear that White's instincts for what the character would say and how he would say it were more reliable than almost any scripted alternative. By the middle seasons of the show, the writers were essentially crafting situations that they trusted White to inhabit, rather than dictating the precise texture of how Urkel would respond to them.
5,000. And let some gravity in here.
Good idea, Steve. Steve, you okay?
Number 16. The show ran on 2 networks. Family Matters is primarily associated with ABC, where it aired for 8 seasons from 1989 to 1997. Its final season, the 9th, moved to CBS in 1997 and ran through 1998 after ABC declined to renew the show for another year. The network switch was unusual for a series that had been so closely identified with one broadcaster and with one specific programming block for nearly a decade. CBS aired the final season on a different night, in a different context, without the TGIF identity that had shaped the show's audience relationship for most of its life. The CBS season is frequently overlooked or simply unknown to viewers who encountered the show primarily through its ABC years and through syndication. That final season did conclude several major character arcs, including the resolution of Steve and Laura's long romantic storyline, but the setting felt different, and the audience numbers reflected that.
How's it going, Stefan?
Hey, I'm just maxing and relaxing.
Hey, well, I'm couching.
Number 15. Stefan Urquelle was a major dual role. As the show leaned into fantastical premises in its later seasons, Jaleel White was given the opportunity to play an alter ego of Steve Urkel, a transformed, polished, and effortlessly cool version of the character called Stefan Urquelle. The premise involved Urkel creating a transformation chamber that could chemically convert him into the person he imagined Laura would prefer. Confident, smooth, and completely free of the nervous energy that defined his normal self. White's performance as Stefan required him to reverse every physical and verbal habit he had spent years carefully building as Urkel. The posture changed, the voice dropped, and the overall energy shifted from anxious to assured. The contrast between the two characters became one of the show's most popular recurring elements, and the creative team returned to the Stefan premise repeatedly, because audiences genuinely responded to seeing White work in a register so different from what they had come to expect. Number 14. The audience warm-up was unusually important. Family Matters was filmed in front of a live studio audience, and the warm-up before each taping, the process of preparing the audience to respond naturally to what they were about to see, was considered particularly important by the production team. The live audience response to Urkel's entrances was a central element of how the character worked on screen. When Urkel appeared, the studio audience consistently produced a level of reaction that shaped the pacing of scenes. Those entrances were timed around anticipated audience response in a way that changed how the scenes were written and performed.
Well, if there was a top 10 list of things not to do as a cop, I bet you shooting civilians would be in there somewhere.
Number 13. Marie Payton left before the final season. Marie Payton, who had played Harriet Winslow since the show's very first episode, and before that in Perfect Strangers, departed the series before the final CBS season. Her role was taken over by Judy Ann Elder, who played Harriet for the show's last year. Given that Harriet had been the character around whom the entire show had been constructed in the first place, Payton's departure represented a significant change in the show's identity in its final year. Most viewers who caught the final season in its original broadcast noticed the replacement immediately.
Give me that jacket. Yeah, right. I worked hard for this jacket. Why don't you do the same?
Number 12. The show addressed real social issues. Beneath the comedy and the Urkel-centered plots, Family Matters addressed genuine social issues throughout its run. Episodes dealt with gun violence, racial profiling, peer pressure around drug use, and the pressures facing Black families in urban America. These episodes were written with evident care and were generally well received by audiences and critics who appreciated the show for more than its comedic surface. Carl Winslow's role as a Chicago police officer gave the writers a natural entry point for episodes engaging with law enforcement and community relations in ways that felt grounded rather than constructed as television lessons. The show never let those episodes overwhelm its fundamental identity as a family comedy, but it never used that identity as a reason to avoid difficult subject matter either.
Hi, honey.
Number 11. The House. Set changed significantly over the years. The interior of the Winslow home underwent meaningful changes between the early and later seasons. The production design evolved as the show's budget shifted and as increasingly elaborate storylines, particularly those involving Urkel's basement laboratory, required the set to accommodate things the original design had not anticipated. Viewers who watch early first season episodes back to back with later season episodes will notice differences in the layout, the furnishings, the color palette, and the visual presentation of the house. These changes accumulated gradually enough that they went largely unnoticed during the original broadcast run, but they are easy to spot once you know to look for them.
Steve, machine shorted out.
Number 10. Jaleel White was uncomfortable with the character personally. In interviews given years after the show ended, Jaleel White has spoken candidly about his complicated relationship with the Steve Urkel character. He described feeling, as he moved through adolescence and into his late teens, a growing disconnect between the person he was becoming and the character he was required to play. He has spoken about the experience of being recognized entirely as Urkel rather than as himself, and about the specific difficulty of trying to establish a separate identity as a young adult while still actively playing one of the most recognizable characters on American television. It was a situation with no real precedent in the industry.
The queries. My expando ray doesn't work on living creatures.
Are there any other problems you haven't told me about?
Number 9. The show's tone shifted dramatically in later seasons. The first 2 seasons of Family Matters were grounded. Domestic situation comedies centered on the daily life of a Chicago family navigating ordinary pressures: bills, school, work, neighborhood relationships. The show that aired in seasons 7, 8, and 9, featuring Urkel traveling to outer space, cloning himself, switching bodies with Carl, and creating robotic duplicates of family members, was a fundamentally different kind of television. The drift towards science fiction was gradual enough that regular viewers largely accepted each new escalation without registering how far the show had traveled from its starting point. Someone watching the pilot and then jumping without context to a late season episode would have real difficulty recognizing them as the same series.
Don't worry. It's almost impossible to find a job these days.
Guess what?
Number 8. Thelma Hopkins joined as a series regular in later seasons. Thelma Hopkins, who had been one half of the duo Dawn with Tony Orlando before establishing a solo acting career, joined Family Matters as Rachel Crawford, Harriet's sister, in the show's first season and remained a series regular for much of its run. Hopkins brought a warmth and comedic timing to Rachel that made her a natural fit within the Winslow household, and her presence gave Harriet a sibling relationship that added dimension to her character. Hopkins had already had substantial television experience before joining the show, which showed in how naturally she integrated into the ensemble.
I have to rent scuba gear to get the evening paper. From now on, nobody uses a drop of water in this.
Number 7. The pilot episode had a different feel. The pilot episode of Family Matters, which aired on September 22nd, 1989, had a noticeably different tone, pacing, and sensibility from what the show would eventually become. The pilot was quieter, more grounded, and more directly centered on Harriet and Carl navigating the ordinary pressures of family life, household finances, and the competing demands of work and home. Urkel does not appear in the pilot at all, and his absence makes visible just how much the show's original premise had to shift to accommodate the character who would define it. The gap between what the show was in that first episode and what it became over 9 seasons is one of the more striking evolutionary arcs in the history of the American sitcom, and it is worth returning to the pilot to see the starting point clearly. Number 6. The show overlapped with a cultural shift in family television. Family Matters arrived at a specific moment in American television history. The Cosby Show, which had premiered in 1984, had reestablished the viability of the family sitcom and specifically of black family sitcoms as a major commercial force. Family Matters, premiering 5 years later, was part of a wave of shows that followed in that opening, including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which premiered in 1990, and Martin, which premiered in 1992. The landscape of black family comedy on American television was transformed across a single decade, and Family Matters was one of the foundational elements of that transformation.
If you win, we'll give you a victory massage.
Number 5. Myra Monkhouse was introduced as Urkel's counterpart. In later seasons, the show introduced Myra Monkhouse, played by Michelle Thomas, as a character who was essentially the female equivalent of Urkel, a deeply devoted admirer whose feelings were not fully reciprocated. Myra was devoted to Steve with the same intensity that Steve was devoted to Laura, creating a comic triangle that gave the show a new dynamic. Michelle Thomas brought genuine warmth to the role and was well liked by audiences. Thomas passed away in December 1998, less than a year after the show ended, at the age of 30, from a rare form of abdominal cancer.
But I'm afraid not even you can capture the fullness of her beauty.
Oh, Stefan!
Number 4. The show was one of the longest-running TGIF entries. Among all the shows that aired as part of ABC's TGIF Friday night lineup, Family Matters was one of the longest-running. It outlasted many of the shows it had originally shared the block with, and by its final ABC season, it had become something of an elder statesman of the lineup, a show that newer TGIF entries like Boy Meets World and Step by Step were effectively building around. The show's consistent ratings across nearly a decade were a significant factor in TGIF maintaining its identity as a reliable destination for family viewers through the mid-1990s.
Ooh, Sparkle City!
Number 3. Carl and Harriet's marriage was a model of stability. In a television landscape that frequently used marital dysfunction, ongoing conflict, and comedic incompatibility as primary sources of humor, the relationship between Carl and Harriet Winslow stood apart for its fundamental and consistent stability. They disagreed with each other. They frustrated each other. They had genuinely difficult conversations about money, about parenting, about the different pressures they carried from their respective jobs. But the underlying solidity of the marriage was never treated as a joke or used as a source of ongoing dramatic tension. The affection between them was real, visible, and unambiguous. This was a deliberate creative choice that gave the show an emotional foundation many of its contemporaries lacked, and it gave Reginald VelJohnson and Marie Payton something genuinely valuable to play. Two people who, in the midst of the chaos around them, actually chose each other consistently and without reservation.
And predictable curriculum. And it would undoubtedly prevent the unfortunate rabble-rousing that has taken...
Number 2, the show made Chicago's South Side visible on national television. Family Matters situated the Winslow family specifically on the south side of Chicago, and the show handled that setting with enough care to make the location feel meaningful rather than incidental or decorative. The South Side of Chicago carried cultural and historical weight that many viewers across the country would have recognized, at least in general terms, and placing a warm, functional, aspirational Black family in that specific setting made a statement that the show never needed to make explicitly. For viewers in Chicago, and particularly for viewers in South Side communities, seeing a family like the Winslows presented with dignity, humor, and full humanity on national network television every Friday night had a resonance that went well beyond entertainment. The Winslows were not exceptional in the dramatic sense. They were ordinary people managing ordinary lives, and that ordinariness was itself part of what made them matter.
Human. Way too many humans.
Daddy, I haven't seen Steven.
Number 1, the show ended without a formal series finale. Family Matters concluded its run on CBS on July 17, 1998, with an episode that did not function as a traditional series finale. Canceled without enough advance notice for the writers to construct a proper ending, storylines that had been running for years were resolved in compressed and rushed ways. Steve and Laura's long romantic arc received a conclusion, but the abruptness of the ending left the sense that a series which had given 9 seasons and more than 200 episodes to American television did not receive the farewell it had earned. For a show that meant so much to so many families across Friday nights for nearly a decade, the quiet way it ended was a stark contrast to the warmth it had always sustained. Family Matters gave an entire generation of American viewers a family to come home to every Friday night. 9 seasons, 2 networks, and more than 200 episodes later, the Winslows remain one of the warmest and most enduring families in the history of American sitcom television. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.